All right, you guys. So last night I got to sit in an hour-long webinar for Groundwork for Horse Fitness. I wanted to share with you guys what my plans were this year as I'm putting my horses first and really diving into this. This is my plan as somebody who lives in the snowy Northeast and has no indoor arena. So, guys, welcome back to Bulls and Barrels Co. All right. So first off, I think it should be made abundantly clear that I am a fair weather girl. I absolutely hate being cold. I can't think of anything worse, honestly. And it's very strange that I still continue to live here in upstate New York, where harsh winters come ripping through every year and just totally diminish my hopes and dreams. Anyway, so enough of that. That's so depressing. So with that being said, I don't have an indoor riding arena. And usually, I'll be honest, because this podcast is all about honesty and just being real. I usually let that be a reason or an excuse to why my horses sit idle for a majority of the winter. Now, last year, I was starting out really strong, but we had a hellacious winter last year. I mean, the snow just kept coming and it never thawed, which normally we would get snow and then it would melt and then you'd get more snow. But last year, what happened is we would get snow and get more snow and more snow. And to the point where we actually had buildings all around the area starting to cave in. So, really, a majority of last winter was just keeping up with shoveling roofs off and just shoveling, walkways. And I did attempt one time taking one of my horses down to my little arena, and the snow was up to my waist, and I just couldn't do anything. And I was working with one of the horses that I'm not currently riding. And so doing groundwork when you can't really move yourself, I was like, this is futile. Like I can't do this. So last winter was definitely a scratch. So I wanted to talk about this webinar that I signed up for and sat through last night. And I've done a lot of these, but this one I actually had to pay for. So I was pretty excited because if it's free, that usually means that they're trying to sell you something. And this one I had to pay for. So I knew I was going to actually get information. So I took a lot of notes down. And I want to share with you Jec Ballou. And after this podcast or even during it, just give her a Google. If you literally just type her name, Jec Ballou, it's Jec and then Ballou, Jec Ballou. She is an amazing horsewoman that has spent, a lifetime just studying, the horse's movements, and she really cares about the horse's fitness. And so she takes a little bit different of an approach. So I actually bought one of her books, I want to say back in 21 or 22, after my horse Bo tore his stifle. And I was told that I would never be able to do anything with him again. Naturally, I'm like, that can't be the last diagnosis. And I started just Googling horse stifle work, exercises, something. And that is when I came across Jec. And so I ended up emailing her because she actually does, if you email her and tell her about your situation and your horse, she will actually write you a program to help rehab your horse. And then she always recommends that you buy her book, The 55 Corrective Exercises for Horses, and she builds these plans off of that book. And it's a really awesome book that she has a lot of photos, tells you exactly how to set up for the exercise and troubleshooting. And there's plans even within the book. But if you have something specific, highly recommend going to her directly and just having a plan written out. So I worked Bo through that. I think it was a 4-week plan. And he had a lot of improvements, but as far as putting him back on the barrel pattern, I ultimately chose not to do that because, I mean, if I'm being honest, Bo really I don't think he ever really cared for it. I think it caused him a lot of pain. And when it was time to start putting him back on the pattern after bringing him back, he just wasn't the same horse. And it always brought him a lot of anxiety. And I was like, I've got two other horses that I would really like to put into that world. So ultimately, I decided that if anything, I'd like to get Bo into some sort of cow work, which lack of time, I haven't even done that as well. I know. I fall short and I can admit that. So anyways, back on, you know, last night. So originally I had a plan going into this winter what I wanted to do with my horses and even include Bo into it because I mean he has got nothing but just fat just sitting out there. I mean he's kind of retired, kind of not. I don't know. He's the king of the castle out there. You know, he earned his time off. But originally when I went into it, I was like, you know what? I don't like being out in the cold. And I think, 10 to 15 minutes a night, all three of them is going to be enough to just kind of get us through the winter, get their fitness up. And so originally that was my plan going into it. And I even started last week just doing little sessions with these guys, spending, 10, 15 minutes. And then I signed up for this webinar. It just happened to come up and I was like, wow, you know what? This is perfect timing because I'm starting to forward think how I want my, this fall and winter training to go. And she ended up posting that she was having this webinar. And I was like, you know what? I should just sign up and see what she's got to say because, this is the direction that I would like to go this winter. And right out the gate, she discussed about the dosage to get the best efficacy from her programs. And it turns out that my little 10 to 15 minute sessions with these guys was not even going to be close to being enough, which I guess I probably should have, just used common sense for that. But for me, knowing that I'm a little wussy in the cold, I was like, 10 to 15 minutes, that's an easy thing for my brain to say, okay, like you're talking 30 minutes if I'm just doing the two horses, 45 minutes max if I add Bo into the equation. So my brain was like, yeah, that's happy. But we need 25 to 30 minutes in order to hit that metabolic stage and to get the stimuli going. So especially, I guess, if you want to use this to replace riding. So right off the bat, I'm like, all right, so my plan already wasn't going to work. So this was already worth the $45 that I paid. And so then she also talked about, so if you have a horse that's in rehab, instead of doing like 25 to 30 minutes straight, which that is for a horse that's coming off of regular work, which she described regular work being that horse is ridden at least 3 days a week or more. 2 days a week is not considered regular riding. So a horse that's coming off of, 3 days or more of work, your session should look anywhere between 25 to 30 minutes. If you're rehabbing a horse, she recommends shorter dosages, so quicker sessions multiple times a day. So she says she likes to give 2 to 5 hours in between these short spurts of exercises. So I thought that was a really good piece of information when it comes to how to design as far as the duration of a program. And then she talked about how at first, so this was actually pretty shocking to me. And so a horse effectively loses its fitness after 12 weeks of not being in work. So my horses having an entire winter off, effectively they are just little wet noodles hanging out in the barn. Okay. And then she talked about the timeline as far as like bringing them back into work. So it's going to take about 8 to 12 weeks to even just bring them back into fitness to start riding them heavy. So that's why in my brain, this needs to start now because in the spring, when the racing season starts amping up, is not the time to start this process. So within the first 2 to 3 weeks, the neuromuscular adaptation begins. So she says that this is not muscle building, although it looks it. But within the first 2 to 3 weeks of having a continuous, doing these exercises, you'll start to see, that the muscles start to, like the horse is standing more athletic. That's the only way I can really describe it. At this point, she showed photos of a horse at the start and then a horse, 2 to 3 weeks later. And the horse does look fitter, but the horse is actually not in shape yet. Okay. So it'll actually take, so you do the first 2 to 3 weeks, you're going to start to see the horse kind of carry itself a little bit better. And that's just, as she explained it, the nervous system is turned on. So the body's carrying itself like I'm in work, I'm fit. But it actually takes another 6 to 8 weeks on top of that to actually start building a little bit of muscle. And then 8 to 12 weeks to do actual deep tissue conditioning. So that's how long we're looking at, building a program. Okay, so quick Google search. Say I wanted to go from right now until April, because in my brain, April is like springtime. That is roughly 18 weeks and 5 days away. Okay. And I know for a fact, Blue is out there with absolutely zero fitness. So he's going to need every single week and day I can give him. And then my mare Rizzo, I would say that she's got a little bit of fitness, but she definitely didn't get regular work, I would say. So she's going to also need this. So now actually seeing that from right now, we have 18 weeks until spring. It's a fabulous time to look into a program like this to start really focusing on our horses' fitness and development. So a lot of her groundwork is all in hand and long lining work. And this all is going to improve stride length and symmetry. And then she also has a lot of pole work. So I went to, I think it was Home Depot, and I bought landscaping poles, and they were super cheap. I think I picked up like 8 of them. And then highly recommend just right out of the gate getting those plastic, I'm not sure what they call them, but like they raise the poles up off the ground a little bit. And I bought, I want to say 8 of those as well. And she had a deal on her website. And now that we're kind of getting into like the New Year and Black Friday and, Cyber Monday, now is a really good time to go to her website and, subscribe to her emails, because then you too can probably get the sales that she runs. So you can get those little pole risers, so that way you can really effectively do raised pole work. Obviously, she recommends, starting with the poles flat on the ground, because horses that aren't used to picking their feet up, they're going to be knocking poles over. So it's good to start out with the poles on the ground first and then raise them. But doing the raised pole work is really going to activate core and hindquarter muscles. And then she also sprinkles in hill work, which I'm pretty happy to, because I actually live in a place where the contour of my land is super hilly. It's the weirdest thing. I'm in the woods, but there's like hills all around me. And so I'm really lucky to have that. But for anyone who's on flat surfaces, this part would be a little bit harder for you. But there are other things. If you go to her website, she actually has blogs of what to do if you don't have hills. And she talks about things like dragging things and stuff of that nature. So don't feel like, oh my gosh, I don't have hills, so I can't do this. You absolutely can do something, and her website is full of information. So then she talks about how core muscles are going to be the first to tone up, and then the butt, but the top line and the lateral muscles will take forever. So we're going to have a nice tight tummy, and then a nice juicy booty, and then that top line and the lateral muscles that a lot of us who are competitive, that we really pay attention to. So just kind of keep that in mind as you're, working through and seeing how your horses are progressing. So other signs of improvement as you're working our horses through these programs, as she talks about, you should be able to see that your horse has a longer hind leg stride. They have smoother transitions and a lifted posture. So as you're moving through, the walk to the trot to the lope, that it's a smoother transition. It doesn't look like they're like riling up and having to throw their whole body forward. Um, um, Reduce drifting. So I know Bo, he does this a lot when I'm backing him up. He'll start to drift more to his right side instead of just being able to stay straight. And that's actually, if you get her book, she has a routine that you'd work through to be able to diagnose exactly where your horse is weakest. So I can't stress it enough, guys, that you should definitely buy this book and spend your winter kind of assessing your horse's all around fitness, because now's the time to do it, especially if you live up in the Northeast where a lot of like the competitions have slowed down. It's a really good time to kind of take a step back and focus on your horse's soundness and fitness. And then, of course, increased willingness is also another sign of improvement. So then she goes into the three different like fitness programs or groups of exercises, I guess would be a better way to put it. So the first one is all core and stability. And these are typically stationary exercises or just kind of being in straight lines. And she went through and talked a lot about some of the exercises that she does. So it's straight line work. And it's funny because she, when someone tells you only stay in straight lines and you're just walking in straight lines, it's incredibly boring. But she said you can spice it up by doing transition work, by stopping the horse and backing up and then going forward again. So there's a lot of different things that we can do, but she really stressed to stay in straight lines and to not, I know a lot of us, we go straight to long lining and just having the horse circling us. And she really stressed on how, like, yep, there is a place for it. And, but it's really damaging over time. So even when she's, quote unquote lunging, she actually has a method where instead of just she's staying in like one spot and the horse is circling her, she actually is walking with her horse and they're lunging around her, but sometimes they're going in a straight line and then you can tell like, all right, she turns them. So it's a very interesting way of moving your horse without having that constant circling method. So if you have a bigger arena space to where you can do that, that's a really great exercise, I think, that she shared. And then for more core stability, it's backing up and ground poles, walking. And by ground poles, it means that they are on the ground. They're not raced at this point. So then you move into strength, which is with the raised poles. We're introducing trotting and cantering transitions. This is where terrain and slopes and hills come in. And, doing brisk walks, straights, and stuff like that. So that's all strength building routines. Now, I did pose a question in the webinar last night, and unfortunately it didn't get answered. And I really thought it was a good question because she talks about how, I think there's three like degrees of training. So you have core stability, you have strength, and then you have aerobic work. And she talked about how you never want to do the same thing every day. She talked about doing core stability one day and then the next day doing strength, and then on the third day doing aerobic and then starting over. But it kind of sounded like to me that a horse that has completely zero fitness, you want to stay in the core stability for a little bit and then, go into the strength stuff and then eventually graduate to the aerobic. But I wasn't 100% sure on what that timeline should look like. So I was hoping that answer would have was given. And so maybe like the first 2 to 3 weeks, just focus on core and stability. And then the 6 to 8 weeks, work on the strength. And then maybe that 8 to 12 weeks, that's when you want to introduce the aerobic. I'm not really sure that didn't get answered. So I guess that answer remains seen. But she talks about the dosage on core and stability, that you want to do like start with 5 seconds and move up to 20 seconds of a rep. And so what that meant was, say you wanted to do backing of the horse as one of your exercises, you would, start to back your horse up 1,000, 2 1,000, 3 1,000, 5 1,000, and then stop. But then as far as like your total, so that'd be one rep, and you want your total to be anywhere between 20 to 90 seconds, if that makes sense. And then she moved into the next day of doing like your strength work. And you would do those exercises for like 2 to 3 minutes. So say you were doing a brisk walk over raised poles, you would want to do that for 2 to 3 minutes at a time. So there's still a lot of information I guess I should probably look into, but anyhow. So then lastly is that aerobic work. And this, she wanted to stress, excludes initial walking phase. So she said that you want to spend at least 10 minutes at the beginning of your session doing a brisk walk, straight lines again, and that does not add part of your aerobic work. That has to be separate. So she does, a 10-minute brisk walk and then 15 to 20 minutes of continuous light aerobic work. And she talked about doing the long lining pattern, so the one that I talked about earlier. So instead of just doing our traditional long lining, to actually move around the arena. And she talks about, doing hill hikes or ponying. So I know that was a lot of information, and I pretty much gave you guys the Spark Note edition to the webinar that I sat through last night. So now, just to kind of wrap everything up in a nice little pretty bow for you guys, look up Jec Ballou and then order. She's got a ton of books. I personally have the 55 corrective exercises for horses. And I know she has another one. I want to say it's the 33 exercises. And the other one is 33 strength and fitness workouts for horses. She just mentioned that one last night, so I haven't gotten it yet. I think I'm going to go ahead and probably order that one today, along with a lunge cavesson, as she called it. And essentially, so if you're unfamiliar with that, I typically do, like everybody else, I have a rope halter. This one is a setup to where you can actually clip on the nose, and she highly recommends that, so you're not like tugging underneath the horse's chin, and you're able to control the horse's top line and where their head is at. So I found a pretty decently priced one. I think it's like $30 on the Amazon. I'm going to give that a try as well, because one thing you'll learn about me is if I do something like this, I want to do everything right, so that way I'm like giving it a fair shake, if that makes sense. So those are some resources for you guys to get started. Like I said, we have 18 weeks to get ready for the next season. And this is what I'm going to do my best to do, unless Mother Nature stands in my way again. But in which case, I believe that, and I'm saying this is my, you guys can, throw this back in my face later. If we get a hellacious winter again and I can't use my arena because there's just too much snow, then I'm going to use the space out front of my barn, because obviously we're going to have to snow blow that. So that is going to be open, and I'm going to do what I can this winter because I want to come out ahead. So here we go, guys. 18 weeks. I would love to hear about what y'all's plans are for, your winter sessions, or what you guys do to keep your horses in shape. If you found that this episode gave you a valuable resource or gave you a good idea for your winter training, please drop me a comment or a little bit of love and support. This one was actually fun because I feel like I provided you guys some value, come right out the gate. This is the stuff I love, and I love to nerd out on. So if you guys don't follow me on social media, please look up Bulls and Barrels Co. on Facebook and Instagram and give me a follow. I would really, really appreciate the support. And again, if this podcast helped you, share it with somebody else that you think it would help. And I am, guys, T minus, what do we got? 6 days until the launch of Bulls and Barrels Co. It has been, this is interesting. I wish that, I don't know if like there's a book or a checklist I could have just downloaded that said, hey, like if you want to start a business, here's all the steps, because I'm over here like, yeah, just get my DBA and I'm off to the races. And I go and I meet with my accountant, and we're working through getting my EIN. And she's like, are you registered to collect sales tax? And I'm like, what? Like, you got to be registered to do. Obviously, I'm going to collect sales tax. Like, I got my business, I got my EIN. I was like, I didn't realize I have to do this whole other system. So anyways, long story short, I ended up sitting down with another lady in the accountant shop, and we're working through this just incredibly long, tedious process. And then it was like, oh, you don't have a bank account? And I'm like, oh my gosh. So today I'm heading into town to get a bank account. And then hopefully Monday I can finish registering for my sales tax. And hopefully that goes through relatively quickly. So here's to hoping that we launch on Black Friday. Guys, I'm super excited, and I hope that you guys are too. So thank you guys again for stopping by this week, and let's get out there and earn that ride today. I'll see you guys next time.